First of all, thank you, Valerie. Thank you, Brenda. All of you. This is super. Somebody asked me, how do you live in Texas? Well, having been born and bred here, the first 28 years of my life, I will say that after 30 years away, I was not certain what I would find when I returned to live full-time. And I have to say that I never dreamed I would find this kind of, not really oasis, but nevertheless, the ivory tower that is the Bush School now is so vibrant, and it wasn't here when I left, so I'm really happy now that I'm back to find places and people doing this kind of work here. It's a joy. I'd like to share with you, and let's see, is this my little thingy to advance? See how tech savvy I am? Oops, uh-oh, all the way back. Maybe it went back to the, there we go, okay. And will you keep me on time? Okay, thank you. I wanted to share a few ideas, ultimately, about the organization for which I work, the Institute for Inclusive Security, ideas that we came up with as a consensus of what we hope the new administration will do, will focus on eventually, things that we think are urgent, frankly. But to understand how we got there, maybe it would help you to have a little background on what we do. So I'd like to touch on who we are, our role in the Women, Peace, and Security agenda, the best tool that we have encountered doing that work, which is national action plans on women, peace, and security, and then get to a couple of recommendations. So, let's see if I do this right. Does that work? Yeah, hot dog. Before 1325, Resolution 1325 was passed by the UN in the year 2000, specifically 1 year before, in 1999. Our founder, Swanee Hunt, who's on the left here, a former ambassador to Austria under Bill Clinton, who went to Harvard to teach after that, to found the Women in Public Policy program and to teach what came to be called inclusive security, decided to continue her work with women that she had begun when she was in Austria during the period of the Balkan Wars. She made about 20 trips, actually, to Bosnia, as well as trips elsewhere in Eastern Europe. Some of you may know her late husband was a symphony conductor, and so she would always go. It was a package. He would go conduct all over Eastern Europe, and she would go and meet with local women. She'd usually ask local U.S. ambassadors if she could be the visiting fireman, you know, who would be the occasion for convening women leaders that they might or might not normally have very much discussion with, and that worked out well. So during that period, you know, post-1989, we were still talking, she was there from 93 to 97, economies had imploded, trafficking had exploded, human trafficking and so forth. So she got to know a lot of these women, leaders who were working across lines in the case of particularly Bosnia, and she didn't want to leave that work, so or leave them hanging. So when she got to Harvard, got to Cambridge, she continued to convene women and founded this organization to help them strengthen one another, share lessons learned, and continue that bridging process. So that became what is now Inclusive Security. And she took her work later to Rwanda, in particular, because that is such a special case, as many of you probably know, with 67% of the women in the parliament, 67% of the parliament being women, first to break the 50% barrier in the world, I think. She also worked in Afghanistan and lots of other places with women. But what she found, the consistent problem, was that women's voices were ignored. Even though, as a group, they were working typically for peace or to bridge divides as a group, their voices were being ignored. Now, that, as you see, is our goal, our mission. It's what we work on. And it can sound very diffused, especially if you're talking about advocacy, because we do try to put women leaders in touch with, well, we try to put them in touch with policymakers, and on the other side, we try to make sure policymakers have access to the women that they need to hear from, which can be trickier than it sounds. We do research. You know, back in '99 and 2000, we didn't have the kind of cutting-edge research that is being done here, that Valerie's done over the years, so many others have done. So we did case studies at the beginning to try and make that case. We realized in dealing with many of these women leaders that advanced training, as I mentioned earlier, honing your agenda, if you're going in to talk to policymakers, you may have a million good points to make, but what are the top 3 that somebody can actually digest? Media training sometimes, nowadays monitoring and evaluation training, these sorts of tools that women need are something else that we often do. And finally, building partnerships. I mean, it was a nascent field in 1999. Nowadays, much of our work involves finding partners, making sure that there's cross-fertilization, doing the kind of things that Valerie in the Bush School is doing here with us today. That's so exciting now that we can do that. Basically, let's see, there we are. Basically, then, of all the things we do, we try to sift and be strategic because we are a small nonprofit, relatively speaking. Where is our value added? That's the question we constantly ask. Which are the tools that seem to work most reliably to further women, peace, and security? The best tool we found, the most comprehensive, is a national strategy, a national action plan. And even though, as we probably all know, it's been since 2004, 2005, that the UN has been urging countries to have national plans, it was pretty slow at the beginning. And even among those plans that now are proliferating, last count there were 63, but that's, like doubled in the last 18 months. So we're getting critical mass, we're getting accelerating numbers, but many of them are still quite weak. They're words on paper. As one non-NATO ally that would like to be a NATO ally said not long ago to me, well, we're looking for NATO membership. Our leaders said, of course we have to have a national action plan. They'll want to know we have that. Of course, I think it's 2 pages and I'm not sure what it means, but, so we've got a long way to go on a lot of those national strategies, right? In any case, we do a lot of things on national action plans. We do individual engagements with countries starting their plan, for example, Afghanistan, where we worked for 3 years to get that plan signed. We've been working with the Jordanians. We worked with Bosnia-Herzegovina on their first plan. This is, where we've been. Where we're going, in many cases, is working now on really trying to make those plans high impact. So, for example, we worked with the Canadians, our heroes. We talked to people in the U.S. government about the U.S. plan. We're just finishing an engagement with the Finns, who are updating their plan. So many of these people, many of these countries are leaders in the field, and we're really trying to get at what's required for the most impactful plan. I think we can boil it down pretty easily to 4 things that you gotta have, which are a lot easier to say than do. Political will, obviously, from the top. Coordination, both within and among agencies of the government and between government and civil society, because obviously you need that cross-fertilization. Financial support, gotta be resourced, people and money. And a true monitoring and evaluation plan, something that really helps civil society hold government's feet to the fire and helps government know what kind of job is actually being done. We do, besides the individual engagements with countries, National Action Plan Academies. This was the one that we did in Vienna in September, which was lots of fun. We had 15 countries, delegations from OSCE member countries, and the OSCE Secretary General told us it was the first time OSCE ever held a workshop that they had to turn away member countries who wanted to participate, which was pretty exciting for us. So I think we're going to continue our partnership with the OSCE. We had the ideal was a 4-member delegation from each country, 2 members from government who work on the plans, and 2 members from civil society. And in 2 days, we packed more information and workshops than you can imagine. And it was really rewarding because at the end, we played a role that we often play, sort of the role that you all are playing here at the Bush School for us all now. We came in and one government person says, gosh, I've been working on NAPs for 3 years at the Foreign Ministry. And I'd never met my colleague over at the Department of Justice who works on this. So thank you very much for, bringing us together in our own country. Or the civil society people say, geez, we've been trying to get a meeting with these guys for ages, thanks. We finally actually got to sit down. And then the one that I loved from a Western country that I won't identify except to say that its capital is Vienna, one of the young people working on the National Action Plan said to me afterward, gosh, I meet weekly with the working group on the National Action Plan. And every week, we sit down and we talk about how great this week has been and what we've accomplished. And if we mention challenges, that's like as negative as we ever get to say that this is a challenge. But she said, I never understood what my colleagues faced, why they couldn't do what seemed to me to be so obviously needed. We finally had a safe space where we could talk about this doesn't work because blah, 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 and that we've tried and it doesn't, and this is what I'd really like to do, but my boss won't let. She says, now I understand the points of view of my colleagues working on these. So that was exciting for us, and we will continue this partnership. For the U.S. National Action Plan, it ain't easy, right? These are just on paper the cabinet departments and agencies that are tasked in the U.S. National Action Plan. And if you've been in government, you know that just saying that state and USAID and the Department of Defense are the main agencies tasked. Well, imagine trying to coordinate anything in the Department of Defense across the entire department and then multiply that by 10 and say, this is not an easy job, no question. I give huge props, first of all, to Hillary Clinton and to the government that instituted our first National Action Plan, and then to the people who were, like me, formerly U.S. government employee, working hard to try and put flesh on the bones. And I think we've made real progress. It was updated this year, and there are lots of good examples of the progress in there. Sorry, the slide is so bad you can't even see, but I was trying to give an idea that there's activities and then who's tasked and the outcomes desired. But the real problem, I think, is that even though it's been 5 years since we had our first SNAP, what we really need is an even more specific government-wide monitoring and evaluation plan. And I don't say that lightly because I can only imagine how hard that would be to do, but I also see it as the next step. I hope we can get there. Now, the main point for our discussion today, I think, is ensuring survival of the NAP. It was passed, as we know, by executive order. It is not enshrined in law. We've been working for 4 years. We started with Senator Kay Bailey Hutchison from Texas as a lead sponsor in the Senate of the Women, Peace, and Security Act. Of course, she's no longer in the Senate, but we were thrilled to see this week, that finally, the House passed the bill. But yeah, exactly, exactly. But we still need to go to the Senate, right? And so that remains to be done. We will see, I'm going to slip very quickly through this. The act would do many important things. But first of all, it would turn the National Action Plan, our strategy, into a legal document. It would turn it into law. It would enshrine it there so that it couldn't be rolled back by any administration. So that's number one for the new administration. Let's get this passed, assuming we don't get it passed before they take office, which would be lovely, but doesn't seem terribly likely. Then, on the to-do list, let's shift the NAP to a results-oriented document, okay? Let's also put it into employees' DNA, as we say. We all know that experiential training is more valuable than talking heads training. We need more of that. It's expensive. We need more of it. We know that if you're a government employee or ever have been, if it's in your promotion precepts, it's pretty darn important. Let's put them in the promotion precepts. Seems to me that would make a big difference. So, here's my call to action. Write, call, do something. To have, as you said, not just the coasts care about this, but to let the administration, the new incoming administration, know that Texas cares about it, Southwest cares about it. This is academics, This is policy wonks, this is students, this is journalists, bloggers, this is concerned citizens. I mean, this could make a big difference. It's not hard. It's a bipartisan issue. So low-hanging fruit for a new administration, in principle. Pass this. I want to close with, with this quote from a French poet, Paul Valéry, from the 19th century, loosely translated. Politics is the art of preventing people from meddling in affairs that concern them. Let's not do politics as usual. Let's do something better, right? Thank you.